Hey guys, welcome to Now That's Debatable. This is your host, Fantastic Facade. I am joined with my trusty co-host, Triple A the Humanist. Today we have a very special guest who's going to go by Jimson, who's been on our comment section recently, so that means they've watched our show, which is exciting. And we're going to again be taking on morality, but this time from a little bit of a different perspective. Since we've never had you on the show before, if you'd like to introduce yourself or kind of tell us a little bit about yourself, or if you just want to jump right in, the floor is yours.
Well, I'd kind of like to keep it to a minimum. I don't want to have the guns loaded before we start. We can talk about other stuff afterwards.
Fair enough. All right, let's jump into it. Morality. So there's been lots
But
of comments and back and forth between primarily you and Triple A, and you seem to have a differing opinion than us. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you think we have wrong?
Well, I'd actually like to know a better, uh,
hey,
maybe if you could explain your position a little better beforehand, because I don't want to just say I've watched your videos and I know what you think, you know?
okay.
I know that I kind of want to know how we're coming at this. Is this going to be like semantics or is this going to be philosophical?
Don't know. I'm not sure what your agreement is yet. So I'll say so. The way I come at morality is first, I say like a lot of people think morality tells you how you ought to behave, what you ought to do, and what ought not to do. That's not the way I approach morality. I think a good moral system doesn't tell you what you ought to do. A good moral system tells you what is and isn't moral. Then the way you determine what you ought to do is going to be determined by your values, but not about what's moral. Because maybe you just don't care about being moral. So I'm not sure if you've seen.
Apathy.
Say it again.
Apathy, huh?
Yeah, I mean maybe. So like so this is a uh, one of the problems where we have a Christian apologist on the show will mention something that God did wrong. Will say that he flooded the entire earth, and they'll say something like, "Well, who are you to say what God should and shouldn't do?" And I say that I'm not saying that. I'm just saying what it is. It's immoral. I didn't say that he ought not to flood the earth. I'm just saying that flooding the earth is immoral. That's it.
Okay.
And I determine what's moral by how it contributes to well-being. And there's a number of things that constitute your well-being. It's your I consider these different prongs, such as your health, your wealth. And when I say wealth, I'm not talking about being rich. I'm talking about access to resources, food, water, shelter, etc. That's wealth. I consider your happiness, your security, your safety, and there could be other prongs as well. But everything that I can think of fall into those categories, and all of those prongs make up what I call your experience. And morality, when we talk about well-being, it starts with experience. So if you don't experience, then I have no moral obligations to you at all. And if you do have an experience, then I do. Well, when we had Fanatic on, we um it was pointed out that obligation might be a bad word to use to say that there's no ought. So I would say there's no moral imperatives are involved if there's no experience or no consciousness. Like for instance, if I take a rock and bash it to bits with a hammer, I've done nothing wrong. If I do it to a puppy, now it's a problem. That's because the puppy can experience, and the puppy can suffer. The puppy can miss out on things. Man, that is essentially my moral system.
That's really interesting because I come at it from a completely opposite perspective. Do you have a particular moral system that you subscribe to, though, or do you have a fully fleshed out moral system, or is this something you're building and working on?
Um, I mean, I don't have a particular label that. For 1 second, hey Fasad, are we streaming on Facebook? I can't find it. I was trying to share it.
Excuse me.
If so, can you just like?
Um,
Yeah, I'll share it to your wall
Post?
real quick.
Okay, thank you. Um, so yeah, there's not. I wouldn't say there's a particular label that I would fall under. maybe the closest one would be consequentialism, because that's a big deal. But I'm not a full
That's where I
consequential.
was going to head with it because I think you actually would fall under a form of consequentialism called utilitarianism.
Yeah, and so
You,
that, well, I not utilitarian, because so for utilitarian, the moral thing to do will be the one that brings the most utility or the most joy or whatever. And
that's that's not what utilitarianism is
okay.
absolutely about, though. You have aggregate morality and you have hedonistic morality in utilitarianism.
Hmm.
Hedonistic morality is about the self. My experience, my pleasure is what's important over everybody else's. Then you have the agrregarian, which is where you take a sum total of everybody's experience and you weigh it, and you do a little math, and then you have morality.
Yeah, so I was referring more to the latter. And
The
I'd
agrregarian,
yeah, and that's one that I definitely reject, because I wouldn't call, like, I wouldn't say you add them up and that would be the most moral one. No, if it's violating well-being, it's immoral, period. Because if you can't say that well-being is the standard and then have an act violate well-being and call it moral, because that's a contradiction.
I come at
So
it from the completely opposite stance. I am
mhm.
a motivational internalist. I think that it's purely about motive. I think that we are intrinsically narcissistic beings and survival made us that way. But to counteract that, evolution also gave us empathy. That way we wouldn't just consume everything around us and all of our, you know, all of our
Did
fellow creatures without
you say that we're
comparison.
about, what was that first part? You said we're all about what?
Oh, it's narcissism, the self.
Okay,
The self is
got.
what's important. Um, we, but uh, the natural evolution has brought into it empathy so that we don't just serve the self. So, so it's kind of like using narcissism against itself
Hmm.
because you can feel another person's pain. You don't want to feel that pain. So you're motivated to help them. But a good argument against that would be apathy.
Yeah,
But I've
it's
got
also
a
subjective.
absolutely. That's why I say that from my perspective, morality is subjective. It's not actually grounded in reality. If you have ever watched the show, like, was it Black Mirror? And they
Hmm.
had an episode where people would vote up and down on the people who were around them based on their actions. I
Hmm.
think that's actually what happens.
So
It's only it's mental. We give each other evaluation based on their actions.
my problem with it being subjective is that when we talk about like great atrocities, the
I
Holocaust,
would
it
just like
becomes.
I would just like to be clear
Mhm.
that I there's the objective is really relative in this sense. It's more about serving society than yourself, and morality can also be hijacked by outside forces and propaganda and well, religion, things like that.
Yeah, not the way that I define it. Like I
But
wouldn't say,
is that a new definition that you intend to use, or is that the current view of morality that you actually observe in the world?
um well, so it's not about what I observe. Like it's about, there's a phenomenon that I'm referring to called
Oh, you
well-being.
froze up.
And am I frozen?
You gotta get some better internet, bro. You gotta stop stealing from the McDonald's across the
Yeah.
street.
Ah,
That's why I stopped talking on my part, because I figured I was frozen because both of y'all had stopped moving. Okay,
good. It cut it up a little bit. It was probably getting
good.
boring anyway.
Good. No, what did you ask again?
Well, like, is your system something you're developing though, or is it something that you actually observe? Does it apply to the day-to-day life
Yeah,
around you?
I wouldn't say that I'm
Is
actively
is this the
trying
way
to
you
do.
would is this the way you would prefer morality to be as opposed to what it is what I'm asking really.
Oh, well, I prefer it that way, and I think it also is the way it is. So like I do have a preference for that. Am I frozen or
Nope.
No, you're good.
okay, all
You're
right.
shooting.
Yeah, so like okay, gotcha. So like yeah, I do prefer it like that. I do like that it's that way, but I think it's also the way it is. So but I don't
I
want to get
don't.
hung up on the term morality. The
Right.
what
Well,
I'm
for me, morality is just a system of beliefs that use logic to aggregate value to human experience.
and so when I say morality, I'm talking about a state of affairs. And that state of affairs, we can describe it as well-being. Like for instance, like we could talk about your heart, right? There are hearts that are more and less healthy, right? And so we could talk about the condition of a heart and what a healthy heart will look like. So that state of affairs, a healthy heart, that would be one of the prongs of morality. And that's what I'm referring to.
Okay.
When we talk
So
about
you're
wealth, having access to resources, I'm talking about a state of affairs. That would be it would be moral to contribute to someone's wealth in that regard.
so to take somebody's money is to harm their well-being. To defame
No.
somebody is to harm their
Oh,
well-being.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yes, yes. Yeah, to
Okay.
take their money behind the well-being.
Are germs immoral?
I don't think germs are conscious. So so I'm referring when I'm talking about moral and immoral, I'm referring to acts, right? And so
Right.
and only agents are able to commit acts. Like when it rains because the cloud gets too heavy, I wouldn't call that an act. Where I'm talking about something that an agent
No,
does.
no. Yeah, I understand. It has to have motivation behind it, intent.
Yeah, I mean, well, not necessarily intent, but it has to be done by an agent. I mean, I could accidentally do something that's immoral. Like I mean,
And you froze again. Yo, Brad, I don't know who your ISP is, but if you'd like, I can give him a call. I know a guy that works in IT.
You're breaking my heart, kid. You're breaking my heart.
my bad, man.
I know a guy that works in
My bad.
IT. Yo, just give me whoever your ISP is. Just let me know who they are,
Give
and
me-
I'll give
Give
them a
me
call.
1 second. Maybe I have too many windows open. I'm gonna close some of these windows real quick.
Yo, bro, what are you using? A hamster on a wheel to run a laptop? Like what? Bro, you work in
All right.
IT
He's got-
full time.
He's got the Tesla turbine on Steam.
My fault, man.
You work in IT
right, so-
full time. Just get better internet.
All right, I got Xfinity, man.
Get better internet.
All right, so
That was not a
anyways,
good plug.
well, I was gonna say with the act, because when we talk about acts, they don't necessarily have to be intentional, like drinking and driving, you kill somebody. That can be unintentional. It's still immoral.
So it's more. Then how do you deal with that? What does that determine?
That is determines whether it is or isn't moral. So, what do you do in response to that? Well, that's up to society.
Well, that sounds like my moral system.
Well,
No.
no. So like, I mean,
Based
maybe
on
if you're
society and it's based on motivation.
No.
So-
I'm saying without
Only the-
intent. Without intent, it's not immoral because if I go shove a rock off a
I
cliff
think-
every Tuesday,
I think you misunderstood what I said, though, because I didn't say the morality is determined by society. What I'm saying is, if something is deemed immoral, what happens as a result of that? That's going to be up to society.
like the court system.
Yeah. There's tons of ways that you can handle that. How do we deal with immorality? Like there are some immoralities we just say you have the freedom to do. Like I could go around yelling racial slurs at people. That's free speech. I could also go around killing people. And they stop me from doing that. So like those are determined by your values. That's when you're getting into the odds.
Yes, exactly. I think it's all odds. It's all turtles all the way down.
How could it
But
be all aughts?
if there's no ises, then
Because
there's no state of affairs.
because it's all based on pure motivation for me, and it's just like our U.S. court system, our
But
legal system. Listen, listen, listen. Let me
okay.
make my point.
Hmm.
It's like our U.S. court system. They judge your crimes based on motivation.
Yeah,
If
that's gonna
you
say
had
no.
intent to kill somebody, the crime is more serious than if you had no intent. They
Well,
have to
sure.
prove your motive.
Sometimes.
There's also something in criminal law called strict liability, where intent is irrelevant. It's just whether you committed the act. But so what I was going to say was, it's
So it
actually
seems so. Hang on, maybe
I
maybe
forgot
I can.
what, for my point. I'm sorry.
I got the point. I think.
Okay.
So let me go there.
Shoot.
I think what's happening is you're conflating how AAA is using morality and how you're equating society's outcome to morality or output or response to reality. So when AAA is talking about reality, we're just talking about the state of affairs. What is not. So if something is good for well-being, it could be considered moral. If something's bad for well-being, it could be considered immoral. That has absolutely zero to do with the response to how people deal with morality, or your values of morality, or how society responds to morality. Because I can go out and slap people in the face, and that's assault legally, but
Right.
that doesn't answer the question whether it's moral or not. To answer the question whether
No,
it's
but
moral, we'd have to look at well-being, and slapping people in the face contributes to negative harm on their person. Therefore, it's also immoral, no matter what society deems.
but are you a schizophrenic slapping people in the face, or are
It,
you
it
doing
would
it because you intend to harm people?
it would not matter. I mean, legally it might matter, but morally the
Morally,
states
it
don't
doesn't.
change. That's why
So
it's
it's
an
just how
objective
you,
thing.
it's just a judgment.
No.
Judgment on a situation.
Morally, it's you're looking at the state of affairs and seeing how those state of affairs change. So if I slap somebody, whether I am blackout drunk or schizophrenic, or I am in a right state of mind and angry, or I'm a child, what I've done is committed harm to another person. And that, by the definition that we're using, or the AAA uses for morality, which is the standard of well-being, is immoral. Now, legally and societally, you can look at all of those things differently.
I think you're confusing objective with objective, like goal with what is objective, really real.
Outside
Because
of mind, we're looking at a state of affairs, which is the universe like itself. We're looking at the things in reality. That
the
is
objective is well-being. You intend to experience well-being. That's the goal of your morality.
No,
That's
it's
a
not
standard.
it's not a goal.
It's a standard.
It's what we're looking to as the standard.
But that's not the system of morality. That's just the standard that is judged by.
And
Sure. I mean, all right. So what, whether or not constitutes well-being, that is just the standard. If it does contribute to well-being, it's moral. If it does not, it is immoral. But it's not a
So-
goal.
Tattoos, drinking, smoking, all immoral.
Well, I don't know why tattoos would be, but so
Because you're harming yourself intentionally.
I don't.
I mean, you have free will over your own. You have your free will.
Yeah,
over your own
Oh,
you
okay.
could get an
Gotcha. Okay.
infection.
Oh, so I know. I know what
You
you're
could
saying.
get-
I know what
you're harming your well-being.
So I know what you're saying. So let's say there's somebody who they wants to stay home and drink all day, right? Or do cocaine or whatever, right? So they have
Harming
a
their
right.
well-being.
Yeah, they have a right to do that. It's part of their bodily autonomy, right?
But
So
it's not immoral.
yeah, whether they have a right to do that and whether it's moral or two different things. I wouldn't say that a person who snorts cocaine 24/7 is a moral person, but I also believe that he has the right to do that.
So it doesn't matter what society. It's only whenever someone else is involved.
Yeah, it matters about
You can't do an immoral action to yourself.
Sure, you could.
I mean, you can, but you have that right because of bodily autonomy.
Yeah, you have
Like,
the right
I
to do
could take
it. So
I could take a
So
hammer
it
and
is
smash
immoral.
my
but
hand.
You have the right to do it.
Yeah, I could
Yeah.
commit immoral acts like that. There's nothing different in me committing an immoral act to myself and me committing a moral act to you. The only difference
Yeah,
is
but-
So you're
society
talking
might
about the
look at it
difference
differently.
between a Monday and a Tuesday.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? I must have missed the analogy.
Well, like the difference between a Monday and a Tuesday, like it doesn't matter what I do to myself, but if somebody else is involved and they do
No,
something that
it does matter what you do to yourself because it matters to you. Also, I mean, there's very few things that you can do that's in a complete vacuum that doesn't affect other people. But let's say you're the only one on the planet and you just want to be an alcoholic. I believe you have the freedom to do that, but it's not moral. I don't think I'm a hardcore libertarian. I believe people have the freedom to and go indulge in drugs and all that type of stuff, but I don't think they're moral. I wouldn't call a crackhead moral. I wouldn't say
So it's
what he's doing is a good thing. No, it's not. It's a bad thing. But
that's,
go ahead.
so it's just whether something is. I,
It's about whether
it
something
contributes
so what
or
you do
whether
is
it is
remember the prongs that I
detrimental.
talked about: health, wealth,
Yeah.
security,
Yeah.
freedom, happiness, etc.
Does it contribute
Yeah.
to or does it take away from well-being? That is the only question you'd have to ask.
well, if you answer that question, what are you do? I mean, I don't understand the point of that. Like,
That's
you've
determined.
you've determined that it's immoral. So what?
I
That's
mean,
the end
that's the
of
whole
it.
problem of is ought. That's a different question altogether. I mean, David Hume asked the is ought problem. He posed it. I don't think anyone has ever solved it. I don't think it's possible to solve.
Remember what I was
Well,
saying?
absolutely, it is. It's
See-
using system
I mean,
theory.
like, be my guess. but
I would like you free to solve it because you run into a logical problem, right? So an ought can't be in the conclusion if it's not in any of the premises, right? You can't say the sky is blue, blue is a color, therefore donuts are happy. Like that doesn't make any sense. Like you can't get. There's no way you would get an ought from it because the ought isn't in the premises.
In your
You can't-
premises.
Well, we're talking about getting a ought from an is, right? So if
That's
you were
the
to put
is-ought
this in a
problem.
formal syllogism, if we're going to get an ought from an is, your premises are going to have to all be ises, and then you're going to have a conclusion that is an ought. And what I'm saying, there is a way that logic is structured that prevents that. You can't introduce new properties that aren't in your premises.
Can a child have morality?
Yeah.
Do they have to understand the system of logic to have it?
No.
So the system
So how does a child have morality?
by contributing to well-being or being
Well-being.
detrimental to well-being.
That's something they'll have to be taught, though, right?
I mean, everything has to be taught. Everything has to be
Through
learned.
experience.
Well,
Yeah.
but how does this get? I'm confused about how did this get an ought from an is?
Because think about whenever you're a child and you're doing something that is considered wrong. Like you don't want to share. You're a jealous little kid. Me. My. um,
That's not how that
your
works.
parents- listen. Your parents teach you that that's bad because you don't want to be a bad citizen of society, and the reason why they justify that it's bad is because you wouldn't want that to happen to you. You have empathy. Do you know what that would feel like? And
That's
I also shame.
you aren't doing
I
the
would be-
is. You're bringing in
and guilt.
values. No, those. So
yes,
when you,
that's
you,
a
you talk
moral
about-
system. A moral system is a
That's-
collection of
wait,
values.
no, so no, you're not getting an ought from an is. You're getting an ought from ises and oughts. Of course, you can do that.
Yes.
That's not the.
But
You're
that's
not solving
not
the
the
problem.
is-ought
You're taking the
problem.
is and oughts and getting oughts. That's
Yes,
an
that's
easy
how
thing
it
to do.
works.
Yeah, but you're
You've been
not.
arguing with theists too long. They're giving you your rules. You're telling me that you're
Jimson,
changing the rules of morality, but you're
Yeah.
telling me I can't do this because it doesn't agree with
What
the
I'm
rules.
Jimson,
You
hang
set
on.
up.
You're kind of
you
missing
said you could
something
get
here.
ought. statement is.
You're missing something here.
Yes, it's is and oughts.
The David
It's
Hume
not oughts and oughts. It's not is and is.
the David
I'm
Hume
not
problem.
arguing for human logic.
Jimson, hang on a second, but the is-ought problem presented by David Hume says that if all you have are is's, you cannot get to an ought. Or that is how he presented it. That's how he thought about it. Now, since then, it's been a discussion for literally since the is-ought problem
Oh yes.
in its
100
carnation.
years,
If you incorporate oughts in the beginning, you're not solving an is-ought problem. Because you're saying, I ought to do something, therefore I ought to do something. What we're saying is, the is-ought problem is, this is the way things are, therefore I ought to do things. That is the is-ought problem in a nutshell.
Can I try exercise really quick? I'm going to give you an is.
Shoot. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Now I want you to derive the ought. All right?
Mhm.
Okay. So, shooting facade hurts him.
I didn't understand that.
Chopping facade's head off hurts him.
Oh, facade. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Give me the ought.
The ought
Mm-hmm.
to what?
Here's an is. Chopping off facade's head hurts facade. I chop off facade's head. What is the ought?
The ought that you shouldn't chop off his head
Why?
Why? Where did you get that from?
because you would know what you've seen people die. You've seen examples of death.
I've seen people die.
It's painful for people around you.
Those are
and you have
ises.
empathy.
No. So empathy. Now you're bringing in a value, right? And
Empathy's
so
not a value. It's an evolutionary
no.
necessity.
No. So empathy says like I feel where you're coming from.
No,
I
yeah,
value
yes.
myself.
I put myself in your shoes. It's narcissism.
Yes, that's a value. You're bringing in the oughts. You're sneaking it into the premise.
I'm not sneaking any value. I'm saying we intrinsically have value because
I
we
disagree
can
about the intrinsic.
understand. We understand how other beings feel, and we know what we feel. It's through experience that we learn things.
Do you understand like this? You know how like a formal syllogism is structured.
Do you think that people learn about tables from definitions?
So could you understand? Can you understand my question? Like how a formal syllogism is structured.
Yes. But
Okay.
I'm not arguing in a debate format of a formal syllogism. This is a conversation.
Well,
We're not
well,
on stage.
I'm okay, but here's the thing. So if you disregard that, then you're not going to understand the problem. Because you're talking about empathy, you're just sneaking in oughts.
You're changing the definition of morality.
We're not
No,
talking
so,
about morality right now. We're talking about can you get an ought from ises?
like
Yes.
The
also, like,
universe
if
is just reality. It's just ises. The sun is 93 million miles away from the Earth. There's no distance that it ought to be. It just is.
It is painful for you to watch people die, so you should not hurt
necessarily.
No,
them.
that's a non sequitur. And yes, that's a non sequitur. It's painful for unless you assume that my value is to avoid pain. Now you're bringing in an ought into the premise.
But we're evolutionary beings. We're based on survival.
That has nothing to do with how logic is structured. We're evolutionary being. That doesn't matter.
But logic is a system.
But that doesn't change things either.
Morality is a system. You're going. You're throwing the system out the window.
Jim, you keep stating random facts as if they're related somehow. Like we're trying to get to a logical entailment of why I should care about something. Let's not use chopping my head off for this example, but let's say there's a mouse in my house and I stomp it with my foot. Those are
a conversation about whether morality is objective or subjective. Though this is like a bait and switch. Now I'm debating oughts and ises.
Well, you said you could get an
You-
is from an ought.
But you brought up oughts and ises. I thought so. My understanding was you had a problem with our moral system, and I think you had a comment. You said well-being isn't
I don't
The
even think you
pocket-
have a moral system now.
okay. So you had okay. What's the problem with the moral system?
Because
tell-
it's not morality. You're avoiding the entire definition of morality. You just want to talk about well-being
What's the
and
definition of
avoid any of the things outside of that.
what do you think is the definition of morality?
Morality is a system of values based in reality, like about
Okay.
the experience that people have.
All right.
Have.
So,
It's like
and do you remember at the beginning of the show how I talked about that a good moral system doesn't tell you what you ought and ought not to do. It tells you what is and isn't moral. If we talk about oughts, those are going to be determined by values. If I don't value Facade, then it doesn't matter if I chop off his head.
but morality is a societal experience. You can't have morality by yourself.
No, it's not. It's not a societal
The
experience.
only reason that it affects anybody is because you're involving another person
Wrong. You can have a moral system with just one person.
on an island by yourself.
Yes.
Okay,
Because you can still do immoral acts.
you can't harm anybody's well-being.
You can harm your
Yes,
own
you can.
well-being.
But it doesn't matter if you harm your own well-being. You have
Why
consent to do
doesn't
that.
it matter?
You said it doesn't matter. That's about values.
You
If
already told me.
if it doesn't matter to you,
You
that
told
means
me that
you-
it wasn't immoral because they consent to do it to themselves. It doesn't
No,
matter.
No,
I
no, no.
did
It's
not.
still,
Fine.
it's still
that's
Just
exactly
crackheads are not immoral.
No.
What?
That is the
'Cause they
exact Jimmy. That is the exact opposite of what I said. All right.
So
I
crackheads
gave you
are
the-
immoral.
No. I gave you an example
Self-acts
of
are-
a
harm.
crackhead on a planet by himself. Right?
Okay.
He has the right for bodily. Here is his body, so he has bodily autonomy. He has the right to smoke as much coke as he want to do, but that wouldn't make him moral.
Are you saying
So
that would not make him
Crackheads.
moral, or that would not make him immoral?
That would not make him a moral individual.
Right. That's what I would.
Okay.
I wouldn't describe
By
a
whose
crackhead as
by-
moral.
By the valuation of well-being, not by anybody else's valuation.
That is what makes it objective, because you don't need a mind to determine this. You need the state of affairs of the universe. And by smoking
Okay,
crack,
this-
that is bad for well-being.
You've determined that this lonely crackhead is immoral. So what?
It's not that I. What do you
What?
mean? It's so what? So
That is
was
the
end
is
of
ought
it.
problem. That's how we got there.
That's the end of it. That's what I was saying. So there are no oughts. There's an is. Now, what we ought to do depends on what our values are.
There's no
But-
we. It's a crackhead on the island.
Okay, cool. Then nothing happens.
Because there's nothing
Right.
to judge him for. There's no reason there's no other people that can impact him or he can impact them. That doesn't make it
Exactly.
any less moral. The judgment of the person doesn't change morality. How are you confused on that?
You're taking away all the utility of morality.
No, I'm not. Because with this system, you can look at it, any act and evaluate whether it's moral or immoral. And now, since there are things that we care about, you can determine what you ought to do.
So
I care-
okay. Every Tuesday, I go and shove rocks off cliffs. Happens one Tuesday, there's some guy down there. I didn't know it. And the rock lands on him. That's immoral.
Yeah.
Yes, you've harmed an individual.
Yep. That's why you should look before you shove rocks off the cliffs.
If you
it
value other
wasn't-
people's lives, that is.
It is-
It
it
doesn't matter.
DUIs aren't like
If-
when you kill somebody during a DUI, it's not intentional. The guy's drunk. A lot of times they don't even remember what happens. It's
Well,
still
that-
immoral. If you kill somebody drinking and driving, it is immoral.
That's
Even,
because he made a bad judgment and got in the vehicle drunk.
and
You made a bad judgment by
throwing
pushing rocks off a cliff without looking down.
Right.
It is
I
the
get you,
exact
I get you.
same. Like, that is a
But-
one for one.
Okay. Where's the system?
That is the system.
The system is we're trying to determine what is moral or immoral. And we do that by determining whether it is beneficial or detrimental to well-being. So we can look at any act and we can determine whether something is moral or immoral. And then what we can do is, since we all, as individuals, have values, and in societies, sometimes we have collective values that we agree upon, come up with things that we ought to do if a situation occurs. Like if a driver gets drunk and he runs over a group of children, then we ought to punish him for it because we as a society value the lives of children. But if I don't value the lives of children, I don't
operating.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how society is operating. With respect to morality, like 200 years ago, slavery was pretty common. That's the way society operated. It didn't make it moral.
Right, because it's bad for the well-being of the slaves. It's
Yes,
probably also very bad for the well-being of the slave owners, but
society can dictate its values, but it can't dictate what is and isn't moral. Not the way we're defining it.
Then you get the same justification. People can rationalize anything. You get the same justifications you got from the Christians that you're actually bettering their situation by taking them out of their uncivilized society and bringing them into a civilized.
So remember when I said I was not a utilitarian? So even if that was true, remember what I said about I'm not utilitarian, right? So even if slavery produced some aggregate good, it wouldn't make it moral because they violated their well-being, they violated their freedom, they violated their security, right? They violated their health in certain ways. So it's still immoral, even if there was some aggregate good. This is the problem of utilitarianism.
Is it immoral to steal a piece of bread?
yes.
Yeah, but you just
you're
said stealing, right?
If you're starving, it's immoral to steal.
It's still immoral.
Immoral.
Okay.
So what's the problem?
Okay, it's immoral.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it. That's
the
that's
whole
it.
point of a moral
system. So my
system,
systems
like
have no is's, no oughts.
the question you keep asking and the problem you try to keep bringing up is that you want this system. Well, the system in place is that we're looking for a way to determine what is immoral and what is moral. That is a good system.
That's how that society operates currently.
Well, it doesn't matter how society operates. If I can give you a system that does exactly what we're intending to do, that is a good system. So
if I can make you an egg that never breaks, you'll have an egg that never breaks.
Well, sure, but that's not relevant to this particular thing. You asked us for a system of morality, and what a good system of morality would do is determine what is moral versus what is immoral. And just looking at is's and well-being as your standard, I can tell you any act, whether it is moral or immoral. So the system holds up fine.
It just, to me, it's like saying economy is trade, and anything that facilitates trade is economy.
Please explain that analogy, because I'm lost with that.
Trade is the goal of an economy. But
So
trade is not what an economy is.
And your analogy already breaks down, because remember,
You're saying you have an economical system, but it's trade, and it's based on trade.
But you said then you said trade is the goal of the economy.
Yeah, it's based on trade.
Okay, this system that I'm talking about is merely ontological. It does not have goals. Goals come from values. If you value humanity, then your goal is to contribute to humanity's well-being. But my moral system just tells you what does and does not contribute to well-being. It doesn't tell you what you ought to do. The system wouldn't have goals because there's just is's.
So you're trying to change hearts and minds to your moral system.
I mean,
No.
I think
I mean, every Christian I know doesn't use well-being. They use deontology. They use Kantian logic almost.
Some Christians use Kantian logic, but that's pretty rare, actually. From what I've seen, most people use God.
Right. God proclaims it. It's a duty. It's Kantian logic.
That's not
Deontology.
Kantian.
Can you explain to me how you could you explain to me how you're getting oughts from the is? Do you understand the how the breakdown and logic? Like you can't introduce new new new
You
information into your
should not
conclusion.
put your hand on the stove because it is painful.
That's the is.
What?
What's the ought?
What's the ought?
You ought not put your hand on the stove because
No,
it is painful.
no, it is painful, and now you're saying so you ought not to put your hand on the stove. Okay,
Right, it's bad for your well-being.
That's big. Okay, you're assuming that you care about well-being or that you care about not being burned.
Well, the creatures that don't care about well-being tend to die and not evolve.
Yeah, that's what happens. They tend to die and
Right.
not
And
evolve.
we're here because we care
Sure.
about well-being.
Yep. That's a fact. Okay, but where's the ought? I don't care about burning my hand or my well-being. So where's my ought?
You're an evolutionary anomaly. Like
That's a fact. I am an evolutionary anomaly. Therefore, what?
You're talking about the outliers of the system or the whole system itself.
Listen, I'm trying to get an ought. I put my hand on the stove. You say I ought not to do that. Why not?
Because it's painful. Because it hurts you.
I don't care about harming myself or avoiding pain.
Well, then there's something wrong with you.
Okay, sure. There's something wrong with me. That's another is. Give me the ought.
I don't need a ought. You're not normal. You're outside of society.
You said you could
outlier.
get one. You said you could derive an ought from a
I
bunch of
did.
physics.
For people who actually care about, for people who are evolutionary,
If you care,
time to do
that's
so.
the problem.
But
Bro.
that's the whole point. That is the ought.
If you care
if I
about
care about something, I can give you a reason to care about it. That is what you're saying.
It's not a reason. Survival is a innate characteristic of existing. If we didn't care about survival, we wouldn't exist.
If I don't care
Like
about
as a
something,
society.
then I don't care about something. If I care about something, I can give you a reason to care about something.
Right. That's why we use empathy and shame and things like that to impart morality onto people. That's
So what
how
you're
we
saying
teach.
is, if I already care about something, you can use that value as an ought.
No, because the little 4-year-old screaming mind doesn't care about anything but himself. You have to teach him to care about things.
So you're imparting your knowledge upon him, and now you're giving him an ought. Let's pretend I'm a 4-year-old who only cares about myself. Why ought I to share with other people?
Well, think about it. You would want other people to share with you if you didn't have something.
What if I'm a
and you wanted
billionaire?
part of it. Huh?
What if I'm a billionaire?
What if you're a billionaire?
I
You can pay
don't need
people to
I
be
don't
moral.
need people to share with me.
Billionaires
people
don't
can
follow
piss
the
off.
same rules as society. They're statistical outliers. There's only like 9 billionaires.
That is an
Way more
incorrect
than nine.
number. Would
It's
you
way
like to
more
try
than 9
again?
But
They're not 90% of society. They're statistical outliers. You're relying on statistical outliers.
Millionaires. It doesn't matter. I don't need your money or children's toys. My parents can get me their own. And there
I know
are
you guys want to run
hundreds
down
of
this obvious
millions
road
of
all night
millionaires.
long.
but
But look,
you brought
I
it up.
personally
You
know
said you
many
could get an ought
millionaires.
from it is.
I did, and you said that you're an anomaly now. You're not normal like everybody else, so now it doesn't matter.
So okay, do you understand? Like you said you can get an ought from it is, and I was just granting you all the ises, and then you started trying to appeal to values that you thought I would have. By appealing to those values, now you're bringing in an ought into the premise.
You're saying all humans have thumbs. I don't have thumbs. Now what?
Yes, but I'm not saying that all humans ought to have thumbs.
I'm not saying that all humans necessarily ought to be moral, but they're impaired. They're driven by their natural
So,
want to survive. Their need to survive. Survival is natural. Is it not? Is it not the natural state of being?
that doesn't make it moral. That
That
doesn't
doesn't
mean
matter.
that you ought to do anything.
But it doesn't make it
Ugh.
moral. We didn't say it doesn't matter. And by the way, like
No, you're saying it doesn't matter. You're saying it
Jimmy,
doesn't.
the
I
reason
didn't say it didn't
survival.
matter. I said it doesn't.
The
make
reason
any
Because
you're
sense.
you can come
finding-
up with somebody who doesn't want to survive.
look,
That doesn't
Jimmy,
impair everybody else.
Jimmy, just being honest with you, the reason you're finding this conversation frustrating right now is not because it's because you're failing to get to a point that we're trying to help you understand. When I define humans,
Driving me
I'm
down
not
a
saying
road that
all.
I don't want to go down. I'm sure. Yeah.
No,
But
that's
you
not
brought
it,
up
Jimmy.
autism.
You said all humans have thumbs, right?
I
wouldn't.
brought up a lot
Jimmy,
of things.
Jimmy,
You're hanging on
Jimmy,
those two things, oughts and
Jimmy,
is's. I brought up
Jimmy,
a lot of stuff.
Jimmy,
Kantian logic, utilitarianism. We're just hanging on
Jimmy,
oughts and is's and
Jimmy,
well-being.
Jimmy, let me
We're
finish
not
my
talking
thought.
about anything
Jimmy,
I want to talk about. I
Jimmy,
want to talk about whether morality.
can I finish my thought, please?
I don't know.
Are you done talking yet?
Go ahead.
Thank you. You said all humans have thumbs, and then you held your hand like this and like, I don't have a thumb, therefore I'm not human. That would mean that's a bad definition of what humans are. Right?
Yes.
So if I say morality and a system of morality is a one that can determine what is moral and immoral, and then I give you a way in which you can always do that, you have a good system. But if I give you a definition of humans that involves thumbs, and you give me an example in which that doesn't fit, that is not a perfect system.
I
Right?
realize you're yelling at me. You're telling me the reason why I'm upset.
I'm trying to dude, you just talked for like 12 minutes over me. I asked you to finish a point.
That's an exaggeration.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So,
Are you
so-
going to interrupt me every time? I'm
You're
sorry,
gonna
what were you
talk
saying?
forever.
I have a way.
Did you want to talk?
All right.
No, go ahead.
Yeah.
No, wait, go ahead. No,
Every
after
time I
you.
start
No, really,
talking-
go ahead.
Exactly.
Yeah, right, go ahead.
You're being
Guys,
No, you
selfish.
first.
Gentlemen. So, guys, hold on.
You
All
see
right,
what I'm
so
saying? Like, you're just going to interrupt me every time?
Stop
Here's a
being
way.
so emotional.
All right, guys.
Why?
Guys.
Why should I care about my emotions? I have emotions. That is an is. Why should I care about them?
I appreciate
Give me an
you
ought,
inviting
Jimmy.
my
You
channel.
said you could do it.
Inviting you to use your channel, but I don't want to be talked to like this.
I got guys.
You,
guys.
you,
hold on.
you said you could give me an
Okay.
ought
It's
from
not good
is.
for my well-being.
Hey guys,
You're
come
harming my
come
mental
hold on.
well-being.
Let's hold on 1 second. All right. So
You're
like,
very angry.
I'm not
okay,
angry. I'm literally just
here's
trying to
the
get a
way.
point across.
I'm not angry. I'm just yelling
all right.
at you.
So
Not
so,
yelling,
all right,
buddy.
guys, hold on. So here's a way that you could falsify the moral system, or at least expose a flaw. You would have to identify something that violates well-being that we would call moral.
I'm sorry. Try that one more time.
So, all right. So when I talk about morality and the standard of what makes something moral, immoral, it's about how it contributes to well-being. If it contributes to well-being, it's moral. If it does not contribute to well-being, or if it goes contrary to well-being, then it's immoral, right? So if you were to give an example of some act that contributed to well-being that we would call immoral, or went contrary to well-being that we called moral, you would have falsified the system. You would have exposed the contradiction.
So if I can come up with an action that is
Jimmy, why do you think well-being is a bad standard?
because
You
can't
said
base
this in a
everything
comment
on-
on our show.
You can't. You're because I'm not looking for a standard. I'm looking for a system of morality. Like you say, it's morality. But
I gave you I gave you
not
the
a-
system. So the
Okay.
system, using our system, you can look at any act committed by whoever, whenever.
you're
It doesn't
saying-
matter.
You're saying
when.
the system comes later.
No,
A
when
sys-
did I say that?
Hang on. Before you even go there, let me ask a question, maybe to clarify. What do you want out of a system of morality?
Good
A
question.
society that functions well and treats everybody equally.
Do you want everyone treated equally? Because that's a different question. And a different
Whether society. Well, it depends on what you're talking about when you say equally. If you
Well,
take it to the
you,
extreme,
you use the term, not me. I'm just trying to make sure that we have an understood definition of what you want.
functioning. Well, I mean, the, a lot of the philosophy that I've studied on this, uh, Kant, Singer,
What do you
everybody.
want? What do you want?
Yeah,
What do I want?
let's say that I could give you with I have omniscience and omnipotence, and I can say whatever you define as a moral system, I can give you. Okay, tell me what the tenets are of that moral system. What steps do I need? What things do I need to have in place for you to agree that it is a moral system?
Well, you would have to agree on how you value everything. But the like a lot of it is if if you go through the history of like how moral systems have developed and how they've been used, a lot of it seems more to be kind of a slavery, right? Like we want society to operate this way, and you're going to benefit the best of society. Even whenever I, even whenever people were sent and drafted and taken overseas, it was against their well-being to go fight in the war, but they were protecting the well-being of everybody else. Is it immoral to send them to die to protect ourselves?
Yes.
I agree, but it's because I value everybody's life. I don't want anybody to die. I don't want any war. I don't want any murder.
So you said on a video that we on an episode we did a month ago, you said, I don't think that well-being is the boxing glove in your back pocket that you think it is.
Oh, that is, I thought you were going to kind of just come at this like a semantic argument. Like, whenever you're talking to a precept and they're like, well, I have knowledge, and you're like, I have knowledge too. And they're like, you can't have knowledge. And I go, why don't I have knowledge? And they go, because I define knowledge as special revelation from God. So if you don't have special revelation from God, you don't have knowledge, so you're incoherent. So they have defined you to lose the argument from the offset. I was afraid that might be what you were doing, kind of a semantic thing where you propose a situation and then you
But
semantically
you
manipulate it in
but
order to
Jimmy,
benefit.
you said this on the No God No
Because
Problem
you,
Moral to Work
it was
episode.
because
In this
it
episode,
was
I explain thoroughly
you,
how the
you said
system works.
you said you defined morality as well-being, and that seemed like an equivocation
So I don't know why. How's that an equivocation?
because it would be like if I defined money as trade. Money is a lot of things. Money is whatever we
So
define it as.
that wouldn't be
It's
an
the paper in front of you,
equivocation either.
but it's
Defining
also
it's a bad definition, but I wouldn't be an equivocation is when you use the same word but referring to different things.
right. So for now, the purposes and intents
Okay,
of the
but
conversation, I'm
saying
talking
money
about
as trade.
trade, and you're talking about something else.
All right. So in the video that you commented on, I defined thoroughly what well-being was, just like I did earlier in the episode. We talk about the prongs. Remember, health, wealth, security, happiness, freedom.
Okay.
All right. So, do you have a problem with those? I'm trying
Do I have a
to narrow.
problem?
Yes. To me, what is the
No.
is there a contradiction?
What is the contradiction?
Is there a contradiction? So
Well,
morality, the standard of morality is well-being, and the properties of well-being consist of health, wealth, security, safety, happiness. And then I said that there are other things that there are other categories that I may have not thought of yet, but everything I can think of would fall into one of those prongs. If there's another one, I would include it. Like I had an apologist on the show, and he said I didn't care about their souls. And I was like, if you could demonstrate that a soul exists,
yeah,
then
absolutely.
I definitely would include that as part of well-being. All right. So now you had said it seems like you had a problem with well-being, or there was some issue with the moral standard. And I'm trying to figure out what the hole is or what the contradiction is.
I suppose it's not morality as I understood it at all.
Okay, so what do you think a moral system ought to do?
It's not about odds.
Okay, so what do you think a moral system does?
A moral system is a system developed to help society function better, but it can be manipulated by using empathy and shame.
Okay, so my moral system can help society function better because you can look at it, you can use the system and evaluate acts.
I'm just saying a standard isn't a system. An inch isn't the metric system. I mean, the standard system of measurement, imperial system. Like, the metric is not the system.
So I mean, I didn't say well-being is the system. I said I was talking about my system of morality, right? So
You're
it
saying the
includes
system of morality is well being, but it's not the system.
the standard of morality is whether an act contributes to well-being.
The standard of the metric system,
Is the
the
kilo.
standard of the metric system is the kilo. Does that contribute to, I mean, does that have anything to do with the rest of the metric system?
Yes.
Is that a system?
Yeah.
Is the key?
Yeah, it is
It-
the
I mean,
standard of the metric
does that tell
system.
you how the rest of it operates, though? I mean, if you just say the metric system is a kilo, it's a standard of the metric system. It's not
Yeah,
the
and if
metric
we say
system
well-being
itself.
is
It's an
Yes.
entire
Can we
system.
can we step away from poor analogies? Just address the what I'm talking about. You can use my standard
Sorry, I
and
tend to
what
use
I
simile. I'm sorry.
say it again.
I'm sorry, I tend to use simile. There was a little delay. I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah, like I like to just stay away from analogies and just talk about the system. So, all right, so you're saying my system isn't the system because of what?
Because you have a goal, but you have no means to get there.
Well,
There's no
Jim, were you
goal.
listening? I said over and over again, there's not a goal. There's not a goal. There is never a goal. It's not in this system. It is ontological. Goals are axiological. They're about values, about what you find important. All right.
Yeah.
So if something goes
So if
contrary,
you don't find well-being important, then it doesn't matter.
get to that person. Yes, this is what I was saying. And that's the way
I
it
just
would
gave
work.
you the exceptions. You keep giving. I'm sorry.
What was the exception? Tell me,
Like-
what was the exception?
People who don't care about their well-being. You gave me an exception of
No,
people
no,
who
hold
don't
on.
care about
Jim,
burning themselves. But
If-
whenever I give you an exception of people who don't care about their well-being, that
There-
doesn't
there-
matter.
Therefore, what?
Because
No, Jimmy,
I get-
listen. No, because I'm asking you a question. Someone doesn't care about their well-being. What does this mean? How is this a problem with my system?
then morality doesn't matter to them.
So then, yes, it is. I'm not. It's not an axiological system. It's an ontological system. So even if they don't value their well-being, we can still evaluate their actions to determine whether it's moral.
But whenever somebody puts their hand on the stove and burns themselves, it only matters to that person.
But you see how it impacts well-being, and it's always going to go back to well-being. I don't know how. Maybe it's just like a really obvious oversight here. But like when you give an example of like someone putting their hand on the stove, because humans have this evolutionary
Right, but if
trait.
they don't, what if the
Hang
human
on,
doesn't?
can I
That's the
finish?
point. You guys said, what if the human
Can I-
doesn't feel it?
Can I
And I'm
finish?
saying, what if they don't care about well-being? And you're saying it doesn't matter in my case, but it does
Right.
in yours.
Or no. Hey, let me clarify and finish.
Shoot.
So if somebody puts their hand on the stove and they value themselves, they have the typical evolutionary concept of survival, they value their own well-being. Therefore, you have a value, and
What if
it
they don't
involves,
value their well-being?
if they don't, you can still judge something as moral or not based on whether it is good or bad for their well-being. That doesn't change it. That's my whole point.
You're saying,
Go ahead. I'm done. That was it. That was the whole thought.
Okay. I feel like I'm spinning my wheels.
I feel like you're trying to find a contradiction and you haven't found it. Because and when you start talking about a system, like you keep getting things wrong. Like you
When I
keep talking about values, and
when
we've
I
said
say right, when I
repeatedly.
say because somebody values their life, it matters. And you said, well, what about somebody who doesn't value their life? And now I'm telling you the same thing, but it matters in
So
my
No,
case, but
no,
so
not
no, no. So,
yours.
hold on. So when in that case, when I was talking about what if someone doesn't value their life or value their well-being, what we were talking about was getting an ought from is's.
Absolutely.
That okay, and what I was doing was
And you're
pointing
saying they
out
ought not
how
to do it
no,
because they
no,
value
no, no,
their
no, no, no,
well-being.
no, Jimmy. So what I was explaining was how you can't get it ought from an is. All right. So now when when you ask me that is under a different context. We're talking about
How
how
are you
my
getting an
system.
ought from an is?
I'm
we're
not getting a
not.
ought from it is. There are
Why
no
should they care
oughts.
about their well-being?
There is
Why
no
ought they to care about
There
their
is
well-being?
there's no reason.
there is no objective reason for you to care about their well-being. But but it doesn't make it any less or more moral. All you're asking is why should you
So
care about being moral?
you're changing a whole system of values like to a coin flip. Yes or
No,
no?
just
Nope.
stop bringing up values. Like the fifth time, there's no values is something different. Values are going to determine oughts. Morality just to determine is.
Could you
If I kill Facade, that violates the most obvious prong, his health. Therefore, it is immoral.
but
So
Hassan
now,
doesn't care about his health, and you don't care about Hassan's health.
and that doesn't matter because it violates his well-being, regardless of whether or not we care about it. So our preference does not matter. What we find valuable does not matter. The fact that in reality, killing him would harm him, that makes it immoral. Whether or not I value being moral or I value Facade is totally irrelevant. That is the axiological issue that isn't tied into my system. What you can do is use my system to do actions that contribute to your values. So if you value humanity, I do. Me and Facade, we're both humanists. So we value the well-being of humanity. We want to make sure that our actions contribute to the well-being of humanity. So we can use this system that we describe and make sure that our actions line up with that. That's how that works.
But
Maybe it
that's
will
not how
help.
society functions.
I mean, it's irrelevant to how society
Irrelevant.
functions. Maybe it'll help if I read you this very brief passage from the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. So, according to the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, there are two well-known and accepted definitions of morality, and it seems that
Okay.
the two of us have the prior, and you have the latter version of this. And the first is descriptive. It's referring to certain codes of conduct put forward by a society or a group as accepted by an individual for their own behavior. The second one is normative. That's typically what you're probably referring to. It's what Fan has been shouting in the comments the whole time. Refers to a group of conduct that, given specific conditions, would be put forward by all rational people. Now, just 2 paragraphs later, we see that accepting that there are 2 uses of the senses of morality, a descriptive sense and a normative sense, does not commit to one holding the distinction between the descriptions of norms, between what is and what ought to be. When we're defining morality, we're talking about what is descriptive. If you're using the sense of morality to define what ought to be, we're talking about fundamentally different things. We're about valuing our entire system off of what is, and we can determine whether something is moral or not in every situation off of strictly what is. If there is a state of affairs that we call well-being and I contribute to it, then that is moral. And if I detribute to it, that is immoral. But if you define it as normative, what ought to be, then what you're saying is this is how things should operate. The problem is there is no ought from ises, at least according to David Hume and no philosopher since. So if we have a system, if we put forward our system that says we want to determine what is moral and what is not moral, and our standard is well-being, then all we have are ises all the way down. We say, this is, this is, this is. We'll never get to an ought. That would violate logic, because there is no oughts in the premises. If you say one ought to behave a certain way because you think that this is the way they should behave, therefore this, then you're going to have oughts all the way through and through. But you can't get to an ought from an is. And if we use a system in which we can give every action performed in the entire world a strict definition based on our standard of well-being, it is an infallible system until proven otherwise. But there is no ought. So we separate those two things. I cannot give you an ought, because if you have no value on these things, then there is no reason for you to care about those said things. However, I can still determine whether your actions are moral or not based on the state of affairs. If you have created a positive to well-being, then you have committed a moral act. Whether you care about it or not is irrelevant. And if you commit a detriment to that to that well-being, then you've committed an immoral act. And whether you cared about it or not is still irrelevant. Because I can't get you an ought. I can't make you care about something. What I can do is determine the state of affairs and whether you've made a positive or negative impact upon it.
We can't force people to care about something, but we change people's minds all the time.
I mean, people
That wasn't
change their
true, you
own
guys
minds all
still
the
be
time.
Christian.
I wouldn't say you change their minds or I change their minds.
Well, I hope that we can. I mean, really.
I mean, I'd love to be able to change people's minds just so I'd always be right, but it's just not.
Could you tell me what your moral system is? So, like, did you say you were utilitarian?
No, motivational internalist.
Can you elaborate on what that is?
Morality, as it exists in the world, is a system of values that people use. It's a system that people use. Let me put it this way: the system that we use to give value to actions and experience. Like, if somebody snubs you, that's not like evil in the Christian sense, but it's bad. It's bad for your feelings. It's bad. You guys say it comes down to well-being, but it comes down to like motivation and perceived motivation.
Say I'm not understanding. Let's say I slit your throat. Why is it wrong?
Why is it wrong that you slit my throat?
Mm-hmm. You're in your house, you're minding your own business, and I walk in there and I don't like Jimmy.
Well, because your motivation was that you didn't like me, and that you just did it out of your.
Why is it immoral to not like you?
It's how I'm giving the distinction between like our legal definitions. I know that you've said the legal def. I try not to use. I'm sorry. I'm very tend to use. I'm trying to get better about it.
I mean, I get it. So, like, look, murder is defined as a type of immoral killing. But like,
murder is defined as
we can get it around the legalism. I can accept the colloquial the way you're using it.
Okay.
Okay, but so are you saying? Are you arguing for like a legal positivism or something? where it's immoral because it violates the law?
Well, no, it's immoral because it's not the thing that we did that was bad. It's the action and the motivation behind it.
But
Is
so like, let
I feel like morality more concerns the motivations of people versus the results of an action. You can have good intentions and be a moral person, but still have bad results. Still have
so
things that seem
let me
uh,
ask this example:
wrong
in
happen.
your moral system, a meth head breaks into your house and hits you with a baseball bat. He has no intention of hurting you or killing you. He's just methed out. Has he committed an immoral act?
I would say no because, well, not necessarily because at that point he is not in the right state of mind, and he would be less accountable for his actions. Maybe okay. If you look at it this way, our brain is chemistry. And sometimes things go in our brain that we can't control. We get angry at lunch. Like we come home and our wife's cheating and we have a psychotic break and something and we don't, I don't know that that happens. I've never done it, but these are things that seem to happen in reality. Like being a moral person to me is about you try to do the right thing and as best as you can perceive it.
What's the right thing? Could you go get as general, get as high level as you can? Like for instance, like I'll say the right thing is something that contributes to well-being. Go as broad as you can.
As broad as I can.
Yes.
Yeah.
What is the right thing to do?
Like, I want to perform right actions under your moral system. What is something that I could generically do, as broadly as possible?
Let's see, as broadly as possible. I don't want to have dead air sitting here, but I'm trying to think.
It's all good, man.
Um,
Like, we got chat going off. I mean, you're a handsome guy,
I'm
so
not
that
looking.
that that improves the show quality already. So that's a plus.
Now you're gonna make me blush. Um, motivation.
People can look at my
So
baby Yoda in outer space. That's always intriguing. Look, it's baby Yoda in outer space. Yes, I know his name is Grogu. Shut up, nerds.
that's why I don't watch the chat. I'm scared of what people are saying.
No, no one
I've
said
seen what
anything.
Look,
I was
people
look.
just
say.
joking.
I think they're mostly. I think chat is mostly in disagreement with us.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if they're agreeing with you, but
it's
the
primarily
comments are
Phantom
mostly
that's
at
in
us.
agreement with you.
This is yeah.
It's-
Uh, but broadly as I can say it, is morality itself is the values that is the value that we give that we assign. Like I can I have to use a simile. I hope I can make this make sense. But um, the goal of an economy is trade, and we can assign that. We give value to money in that trade. We assign value to human experience because your time is money.
But doesn't that make
The
it
mon-
subjective?
the money is a representative. Yes,
So
yes, it makes it
and so,
subjective.
but here's the problem that I have with it. So I mean, it's not a contradiction in your system, but it leads to something that I find just abhorrent, like the Holocaust. Like you can't even say that it was immoral. It you could just say it's not desirable. I don't prefer it, but somebody else may, and we're on equal ground.
Well, what was the motivation behind the Holocaust?
Well, it wouldn't matter because if it's about values, perhaps I value the destruction of Jewish people.
No, no, assigning value. It's about assigning value to the actions and experiences. The experiences of it would be kind of about well-being,
Okay, but
but
what if I value the experience of killing people in a gas chamber, Jewish people specifically?
see, that's the exception. The reason why would you value that though? though? What is the
It-
what is the
It's so
reason?
like
it's
mean, like
subjective.
not to
I just
not to sound like a
why did the Nazis value?
okay. I'm gonna answer that question. Actually, that's what I wanted to do. I hate to sound like I'm gonna defend Nazis because I'm white and bald, but the
Hey, I was
Nazis.
afraid to bring up Nietzsche for that very reason because of the Semitism thing that's going
Yeah, the answer is they had a misrepresentative idea that Jews were damaging or potentially damaging the future gene pool of Germany, the Aryan race. So they cared about the Aryan race more than they cared about Jewish lives. That is the reason they killed them. Now, in a
Right.
utilitarian view, if that were the case, then the Holocaust is justifiable.
definitely.
No, I'm not saying utilitarian. I'm saying motivational internalism.
But yeah,
But
but even by the way you're defining it, someone could say the Holocaust was the right thing to do. I say it's the wrong thing to do, and
You
we're
could
both
say
on.
anything.
Okay, but your stand, if you're saying morality is just a value, then the
No.
just
How
because
we value,
you said how we value,
how we assign value. It's a system of assigning value to experience.
right? And so, but it's subjective. So I could assign value to some things, and some things get no value, and they could get varying degrees of value.
Right. That's why it's societal.
right, but
But
the
it,
society in World War
Currency.
One Germany was one of trying to purify the Aryan race.
Right.
Right.
And they believed that they were absolutely moral.
Right, but
but
your
were
moral
they?
system
That's
would
what I'm
agree.
concerned. Not about what their belief. Like, were they moral or were they not?
Well, by their belief, they were.
Right, so therefore they were.
Well, as far as their society was concerned, yes.
So if
And
you
which
just
would be yes,
leave
according
things
to
to
you.
society and societal norms, it's only what society says that is moral. Therefore, society is determining your morals. Well, and slavery was moral
That's
until
my
about
point.
200 years
It
ago.
is. That's how it works. That's how it works in reality.
So
No.
I think no, that's not how it works. And also, I think that eliminates progression. Because why change? Because whatever society values at that moment is what's moral. Any deviation from that would be immoral.
Because
Because
to change the system, you have to address it as it is. You cannot look
but
at a system
it
as
would be so like let's say it's 300 years ago, and I'm an abolitionist. I'm trying to change society. I would be wrong according to you by trying to eliminate slavery. But I'm going contrary to
No.
society.
Listen. You would be wrong you would be immoral according to society. You could tell society that you're the moral one all day long.
Sure, but you're saying morality is what society values. So
Right.
I'm not just
It's a
immoral
value.
according to society, according to your system, because your system is based on what society has determined.
It's the
Any
value that society assigns to it. Yeah.
Sure, and now
Yeah.
any deviation from what that society values will be, by your definition, immoral. So it
Well,
will
ends
be
up in
immoral
people's-
to try to end slavery.
Well, it ends up in individuals' eradication because society is the one that determines.
Sure, but okay, but now so now it would be immoral to end slavery.
No, I'm saying at that point it was seen as immoral.
But okay, no. You aren't saying that what society does, no, what society values is what's perceived or seen as immoral. You're saying what society values is what makes something moral.
Well, look at the hardest arguments.
Okay, but you address what I'm saying. All right, so if you say that whatever society values is what morality is,
I'm not saying that's
And-
the way it should be. I'm saying that's the way it is.
No.
Look, like the biggest issues we have that we fight about all the time, that humanity argues, like the war that's going on now. People pick one side or another with everything, and usually one side wins out. We have Republican and Democrat. It's like there's a duality of man. And this has to do a lot with
People-
systems theory. and
People
stuff
can
like that.
disagree, but what matters is reality. So like we could talk about
But
like for
People
instance,
do
like
disagree.
here there's an episode we covered maybe a year ago. We were talking about the COVID vaccines, and the guy we had up here was a secular humanist, and he believed that it was society's best interest to not have the vaccines, and we believe that it was right. What was actually moral by our system is what reality dictates. We were arguing different sides, but that was an epistemic issue.
I'm
It
saying
wasn't
these-
an ontological issue. It didn't affect
these
the
are-
actual.
I don't think these are moral decisions, though. That's not a moral decision whether or not you should receive a vaccine. That should be debate based on evidence. Like,
I think
Okay,
that is a
but,
moral
like,
decision.
Uh,
You're,
Also, I just like by saying that, let's go back to the 300 years ago and being an abolitionist. How do we determine whether that person is acting morally or not?
you can't judge society on the morality at the time. You just can't judge it on today's morality.
Okay, but let's
Because-
judge it on
why
today's
the hell
morality.
not?
Hey, no, that's fine.
Okay.
Let's just go down that rabbit hole for a second. Today,
You can't say
morality.
you can't say that yesterday's morality is today's morality.
Okay,
You can't.
fine. For that sake, today's morality right now, June 11th, 2024, is abortion moral or immoral?
I think it's moral,
Why? We
Depending on
just outlawed it.
depending on motivation. It's another system that I
We
actually
just
don't
outlawed
think
it.
should be judged by morality, though, because it's a person's decision, and they have to determine whether or not they should go through it with their doctor. And I like the Planned Parenthood setup. I like that they went in and they got counseling and they were given other options. It wasn't whether it was immoral or not; it was a choice that they had to make, and they had
So-
to make
but
that
we're-
decision based on how they were
But
going to live
Jimmy,
their life.
I get what you're saying, buddy, but the whole discussion of the show is surrounding morality. So I'm asking you, can we determine whether this action is moral or not in your system in
don't-
today's society?
I don't think so. I don't think that's society's choice to make.
So it sounds like you have a bad system of morality because I can't determine whether actions are moral or not.
Well, society doesn't get to determine what action you take with your own body. That's how it should
That-
be.
Doesn't matter.
So-
Can I determine whether it's moral or not? I need a
Jimmy-
system to determine whether something's moral or not. That is the purpose of a moral system.
So Jimmy,
You're forcing morality onto issues that doesn't apply to. It's not a moral question. It's like saying, is it moral if I have $500 or $800?
no,
That's
no,
not a
it's
moral
No,
question.
it's
Jimmy,
not
no.
because it's
That's
impacting
not
another person.
Having $500 isn't an act, right? But what
Yes,
you
it-
do with
it's
what you
event,
do
yeah.
with it is an act. So look, I have a daughter, right? And I want her
Having
to
it
be,
is doing something with it.
No, that's
Sorry.
the difference in an
I didn't mean to
active and a
interrupt.
passive
Go
verb.
okay. So I have a daughter, and I want her to be a moral person, right?
Yeah.
And I could explain my system to her, and she could use that system and determine whether her acts are moral. What I'm hearing from you, I don't see a way she could do that.
Because the other day, the reason why it
Another
operates the
problem,
way-
but
Go ahead.
before you finish, there's another problem that you have is that society isn't a monolith. It's very complex. Because even like when we're talking about with the slavery
Yeah.
example, 200 or 300 years ago, like it wasn't like all of society thought slavery was a good thing. It has always been a controversial issue. So
Absolutely.
so it seems like your argument also assumes that society is a monolith, and it's not. People believe wildly different
No.
things. You're not going to be able to come to one coherent
Exactly.
position.
You're talking about systems within systems. Society of the world is not one society as a whole. It should be.
Society of the United States.
Society
Any
of the
jurisdiction you're
state
talking
you
about.
live in.
should
Society
be.
of the
The world-
city you live in.
The world should be, yes, the world we live in.
So how
You
do-
can't even break it down to your own city. You can't get a panel of your own city like councilmen to have 100% agreement on anything. No matter what city you live in, I guarantee that's just not the case.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you can't. It would seem a really bad idea to leave it upon society, which is so mixed.
Well, that's the thing. Society is groups within groups. Everybody has their own moral code. If you go to a prison, their moral code is totally different than somebody's moral
Okay,
code on the outside.
so Jimmy, so you just have a society, and we're gonna talk about something like slavery. Some people think it's good. Some people think it's bad. Some people think it's amoral. There's like so many, and it's like a mixture of reasons. What is the right answer? What's the moral thing?
What's the moral thing? It's
Yes.
not.
You have a society,
thing-
and everybody has their own opinion on it.
Well, see, that's why we vote. But the moral thing is, well, to not own people. I mean, I don't know how anybody says. It's
Why is
moral
the
to
moral
own
thing to
people.
not own people? There's large segments of society that think you should be able to own certain kinds of people.
Right, because they can you can rationalize anything. I
So
mean, you
what's the
really
right
can.
answer? How is not owning people the right answer when there are large segments of society that disagree with you? Aren't we
Well,
basing
because
it on society?
well, I believe we still live in a state of indentured servitude and credit debt and slavery, but I guess that's beside the point.
Yeah, I mean,
But
like specifically chattel slavery, as in the 17th, 18th, 19th century United States.
well, I don't think slavery has gone away. I think it's just adapted.
Sure, but
I
I'm
think
not asking whether it's
I think
gone
the
away.
upper
I'm asking you,
echelon.
how do you determine whether it's moral?
I hate to tell you. I mean, like, I'm
Would it be fair to
I,
say that there is no
I'm
way?
combating. I'm combating. You're asking me about today's society, right?
Even in
No,
today's society,
I'm-
there's
talking-
still people that have incredible disagreement. Like the last country to ban slavery was in the mid 2000s. There are still countries that have slavery as legal today. So in today's society, there is legal slavery. Those people think that slavery is fine. There are people that are indifferent to slavery, and there are people that are opposed to slavery. How would we determine that owning slaves is wrong? How do we determine anything is right or wrong in your system? That's the whole purpose of a moral system, is to determine what is right and wrong, good or bad, plus or minus, whatever you want to use, right? We're trying to come up with a way in which we can judge actions and determine or deem them moral or not. And I would say that based on well-being,
that's why I'm in
we have a
conflict
good
with
way to
what
do that.
society does versus what I would like society to be.
But Jimmy, so it gets really problematic because right now we can't use your system to determine what is and isn't moral. And now since we have no ises, I can't even determine what the ought would be. I don't even know what I ought to do because I don't know what is and isn't moral. Like what? So if I want to be a moral person, and I don't know what is and isn't moral, I can't determine what I ought to do. Hold on one second. Go ahead.
I would say, like, the problem that we're having is that we've presented to you a system to define morality, in which we can determine actions and say whether they're moral or not. And when we ask you to do something similar, it seems that we have no way or method, no reliable method, of determining an action as moral or immoral. So when I ask you, is it wrong to own a slave in today's society? You say, well, society has helped determine that. Well, in America, it's wrong to own slaves, but in certain African and even like European countries, slavery is essentially fine. And some African countries, they weren't literally like the last banned slave in Africa.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's a good system that I approve of. I'm saying what it is.
But like you're muted. You're muted.
I'll can you hear me now?
We're at the end of our time.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Well, I mean, I could go in like another 15 if you don't mind. Do you have to go?
I don't mind at all, as long as you like.
All right, so I can go to the 745. But what I was going to say was I don't think it's not a system at all because I can't use it to determine what in it to know what isn't moral, and therefore I can't even use it to determine what I ought to do.
Well, because I'm telling you what the moral system is. I don't agree with it. I think it's crap. I'm telling you what it is, and you're telling me what it ought to be.
Well, so no, so we may be equivocating here because like when I use the term morality, what I'm talking about is what I described earlier. Then when you use the term morality, you're talking about this other thing that's full of contradictions and
It's usually her bath time, I think about now.
Family moment. Good.
so
You froze. Yeah, I'm gonna start sending you some. I'm gonna start sending you some money for Wi-Fi.
She walked in front of the router.
Yeah, I'm gonna send this dude some money for some Wi-Fi, bro.
yeah, what I was trying to say.
I'll pray for you for a better signal.
Yeah, we need to do something. Get the Christians in here. Something.
All right. Next conversation. So what I was trying to say was that it doesn't seem to be a system at all because I can't use it to determine how I should behave. Because like if you're gonna you say you value something, right? So let's say I value my daughter, right? And so I wanted to do things that are good for her, right? Okay.
Yeah.
In order to do things that are good for her or moral to her, I need to be able to know what is and isn't moral.
Okay.
And the only way I can do that is by knowing, by having a consistent standard of morality. Your system does not give me that. Mine does.
Right. Society is not consistent. It's not my system. I'm talking about.
It sounds like there isn't a system of morality that you adopted, and is incoherent.
It's how society functions. What I observe society to be doing.
Okay, but
the morality that is in practice, not the morality that I would like.
Okay, so would you call slavery in the antebellum South moral?
No.
Okay, then you're not using society as a standard.
But I didn't
because
live in
the antebellum.
But I didn't live in the antebellum South when slavery existed. I didn't experience that. Their experience was totally different than mine. They would have felt they were right to do it.
So okay, not about what they felt. So let's get into both of us go in the time machine. We go visit the antebellum South, right? It is 1850s Mississippi. Are we calling slavery moral?
If we lived, I don't know, because I don't know whether I would have been born in a family that had slaves or a family that was against slaves. I don't know. It would have depended on the.
Hence the problem with your system.
It's not my system.
This is easy. This ought to be an easy question to answer.
I'm not saying it's moral. I'm saying they valued it as moral.
But that's what I'm asking, Facade. Is if we go in the antebellum South and you see slavery, would you say that slavery is moral?
No, slavery is wrong.
I don't know.
But
that's it.
I mean, if I went back in time, which is a logical impossibility, maybe. But I can't go back in time. I can't know what it was like for the people who lived back then.
Right, but
what they experienced.
Don't you think a system which isn't bound by time or experience would be a better system?
Most of people's morality was based on what their family told them and what they've been taught. What we're taught is good and bad growing up. It shouldn't be that way, but that's the way it is. That's the society we function in. You're being an idealist. You're talking about what you want. I'm talking about how morality
functions. There's a difference in
people
presenting.
call moral. If me slashing your tire is immoral, it's.
Well, let me interject here real quick. There's a difference in adopting a moral system or framework and saying that's what society is and ought to do and should do and has
absolutely.
And all those things. So
I think that's why we're talking
when I
past
say I want to
each other.
have a discussion about morality, What I'm talking about is well-being. I'm not talking about what I want or what society is currently doing. And by using my method, it doesn't matter whether I time travel back to the 1850s South or whether I'm living in modern day. I can determine whether something is moral or not. That is a
That's
good
why we're
system.
talking. That's why we're talking past each other. It's because you're talking what ought to be, and I'm talking about what is.
No, I'm not saying that even society should be this way. I'm saying when we're talking about morality, this is how we're defining it. It is an axiomatic proposition.
Okay. Do you think most people walk around using axiomatic propositions in their life?
I mean, if it helps, I can define it for you.
You guys, I feel like you're going way more philosophical than society ever even thinks about. Most people don't even give this a minute of consideration.
I
Like
mean,
the way
that is the
society
nature of
functions.
the show. That is the whole point of having this discussion. It's
Right. I would like,
people
I would like
have
society to consider their actions and have
But you
a
see,
better
just by
system
us
of
having this
morality.
conversation, like you're doing that. You're able to now look at things from a different perspective, and you can say, I don't like the way society defines morality because it leaves holes. It leaves me subjective to time. It leaves me possibly defending slavery and the Holocaust. Instead, what I'm going to do is when I talk about morality, I'm going to use this. That way I have a standard across the board in which I can measure and act as moral or immoral at like throughout time. Time immemorial, right? And that is a better
That's what you
method.
want.
That is a better method than your average person is using.
That is what you would want to do.
No, that's what I'm
It's better
doing.
than what everybody's using. That's better than what exists. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about what exists in reality.
Right, but if we're just saying that, like, people have opinions, yeah. We're asking about if you have a moral framework, and what is it? You said you had a problem with ours. We still didn't get around to that, as far as I can tell.
Well, that's the thing. It was whether it was experience or not, whether it was based on experience or not. I was talking about whether morality is, as it is, subjective. It is subjective currently. You're talking about a morality system that you would like that is objective, that most people don't adopt, that most people don't even know exist unless they've listened to Sam Harris or maybe Matt Dillahunty or somebody like that. Most people don't know of a moral system based on well-being.
Well, just
They
because
base it
people
on
haven't adopted it
they
doesn't
base
make
it
it
on
a
how they
bad
feel
moral
about it.
system.
If you would like to talk about how we could develop a better moral system, then I would be loving to have that conversation. But I'm talking about the current moral system that exists is totally subjective and it is shit. I'm sorry.
We don't care. You can cuss.
My kid can't hear you if that's what you were worried about.
Yeah, no, I mean, like the whole
We
thing
didn't
is
discuss
we're
that
talking about like our own
beforehand.
moral
Good.
systems and philosophy, right? So obviously we're not saying that well-being the standard is how all of society and every human ever accepts the definition of morality. We're saying that if we
I'm
would
talking about how
like
they
to have a
operate today.
conversation about morality and we would like to make it an objective conversation, we can posit this as an axiomatical framework and say that we have a standard that everyone could use, that everyone could look at, and just have ises and be able to determine whether something is moral or not. And that is not currently possible with the way that you're using it or the way that society uses their definition.
Right. Exactly.
So why
That's
use society's definition? Why not use a definition that you can agree upon with others that you can have a standard of? That is the whole purpose of our conversation.
no. The purpose of our conversation, I
I don't
thought,
cuss
was to
that often,
determine
Dan.
whether
Sorry.
morality as it exists today is objective or subjective, not a proposed morality that doesn't exist. And I assumed you were defining well-being as morality, that was wrong because that's not how morality is, how
So,
people use it.
all right. So
That's not how it functions.
maybe there's a misunderstanding here. So when I say morality is well-being, I'm speaking shorthand. More, an act is moral if it contributes to well-being. That's what I'm saying. So when I say morality is well-being, of that's not a I mean complete accurate statement. I'm just speaking in shorthand. So what I'm just saying is that the standard of morality is well-being.
I'm
So just
saying
like I
that
could say, like a foot is 12 inches. Well, no, a foot and 12 inches aren't the same thing. But you could use 12 inches as a standard for what a foot is,
well,
if that makes sense.
right. 12 inches is the standard, but it's not the
It,
system.
I don't understand why we went back there. All right. So,
Because morality, it's the
yeah. So
system of logic.
well-being is, yes, well-being isn't the system. Well-being or is what we call your experience that's made up of those prongs that I stated earlier. And you can look at the way an action affects those various prongs to determine whether something is or isn't moral. And all of that is what the system is.
Well, I don't even think most people can determine what well-being is. I mean,
Well, I just did. I just told you what it was.
well, yeah, you're saying objectively, but if it's,
But
I guess,
that doesn't
I
matter.
guess, I guess, I guess you're saying as we give our, because to me, morality, an immoral action isn't something that you can have on your own. You cannot do something immoral by yourself. You can only do immoral things in front of other people because you're not the one giving the value. It's the other people around you or who are like, do you know what peer pressure is?
Sure, but remember again, my system does not care about values. It's not
Right.
that I value. It's not a
You're
well.
not talking about morality
You
in an
use that
existent
word.
way.
Remember, it's not like I happen to value well-being, but even if I didn't, it wouldn't make murder moral.
I would like gooses to poop gold bricks, but they're not going to do it because I define it that way. It's not how it works. They
I
don't
don't know
poop
how
gold
that was
bricks
relevant to what I said. All right, so
because I'm talking about what morality is, and you're talking about what you would like.
let's say okay. So there are things you experience, right?
Absolutely.
Okay,
That's everything.
all right, and your experience can be broken down in different ways, right? And we could talk about how something
Into a system.
So we could talk about how something may affect your health, it may affect your wealth, it may affect your freedom, right? And these things are interconnected. Like for instance, let's say you're sick and I steal money from you. Now you can't afford your medicine, so I stole from you. I violated your wealth, but that also violates your health because now you're going to get sicker. Also, you may be less happy, so that's another prong. All of these things do make up your experience.
Wait. Let's address the money before we go on to another point. Let's say you're a billionaire and I steal $5. Does that affect your well-being? You don't know about it.
Yes, so it is not just my well-being; it's well-being in general. Because you have to consider. Look, you also have to consider the moral precedent that you're setting. Let's say you steal my money and I just don't know about it. So like now what you created the precedent of is that something is moral if the person doesn't know about it. Is that how things work?
Well-being. It doesn't affect his well-being.
Maybe this person doesn't know that it affected his well-being, but you have to consider the moral precedent that you're setting. That
he's a billionaire. Does it really affect his well-being?
That does affect well-being. The moral precedent that you're setting. Because you're saying
the moral precedent is well-being.
No, it's not. The moral precedent you're setting has an effect on well-being. If you're saying that stealing from a billionaire is okay because he has a lot of it,
I'm starving.
Yeah. So okay, cool. So now what you've done is created some precedent. You've created this principle that is okay to steal as long as you need something.
Right,
That principle, that principle has a disastrous effect on society. Therefore, it's immoral.
So society's well-being matters more than my own.
No, I don't know how you got that from what I said either. But we're hitting on 7:45, and I don't know, man. I don't know how
It's
you mix it.
okay. I know. We'll think about it and watch the video. Maybe we could talk about it a little later. I'd be glad to come back on. It was a good time. I hope your channel grows, and I appreciate talking to you guys. Sorry if we got a little heated there, or we
Nah,
got a
man,
little.
the show gets heated all the
Happens.
time, and
It's part of the course for talking about things that people care about. You know.
So in the chat, just so you're aware, most of them were on your side, and one of the regular watchers, Dan, said I was an asshole, and it's agreed upon. It's not that I can be. I am an asshole. I'm aware of it. But don't take it personal. I'm an asshole to
No,
everyone
I don't.
equally.
I can totally. I watched you talk.
I want to address Dan Shirer's last comment. He says true. He says more specifically, he's assigning value to specific things and deciding they comprise well-being. No, so what I'm looking at are things that constitute your experience. Morality begins when you are able to experience. That's why I said at the beginning of the show, you can bash a rock to bits with a hammer, and it's not immoral because the hammer didn't experience anything. It didn't affect. It didn't affect the rock's well-being. Rocks can't experience; they're not conscious, right? But puppies are, and there are various ways that you can affect a puppy. You can affect the puppy's health by poking it in the eye. You can affect a puppy's wealth by stealing its bone. You can affect its happiness as well. I'm looking at all the things that contribute to a person's experience. Hold on one second, Jimmy. I was trying to address this comment. So
You get last word, by the way.
Yeah, what is it about? What I'm looking at are the things that constitute that experience. If you can prove that a person's safety or a person's health or wealth has no effect on their experience, then I'll take it back. But to me, this is a very trivial thing to prove. I don't know how, in the name of common sense, you could say that a person's wealth doesn't affect their experience. Like if I'm sick, I need food, shelter, water, and access to medicine. All of those things. That's part of my wealth. That affects my experience. It's not arbitrary. It's not about me valuing things. It's about the ontological facts. But go ahead, Jimmy, and we'll end it.
People steal from billionaires all the time, and they don't even know it. And they justify it because billionaires not even going to know it. People live by their own codes. We don't, and then we're judged by society if we're discovered. We each have our own code of morality, really, but society determines the value of that code and whether it's not accepted. I mean, you can live by your own rules, but it doesn't matter in a society. Like they will punish you if you don't follow their rules.
Well, I'll give you last word. My wife just sent me some eyeballs. She's telling me to get off the show.
Go get your dinner.
Yeah. But hey,
Thanks,
man, I appreciate you coming on, man. Guys, next week we want to have a guy, Mario, coming on the show, and we'll be discussing reality and what reality is, what truth is.